Hello, and a warm welcome to all of you for joining us today on our sustainability webinar series. I see we've got a very diverse group today, a lot of you from all around the world, which is fantastic. Today, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Tim from Socialsuite. Socialsuite are not just a provider of software and support platform to help prepare sustainability reporting, particularly around the double materiality assessment, but um, I think one of the things that really excited us at PKF Global about Socialsuite is that they really have a deep understanding of sustainability reporting and the challenges that go into it and the benefits of doing it properly. We've just seen wave one of reporters in Europe reporting under the ESRS requirements, and we can all look at the financial the statements that they've produced, the sustainability statements, and it's clear there was a lot of work went into reporting on impacts, risks, opportunities in those statements, for example. But I think there's also a lot of opportunity still to improve on the processes behind generating that information, streamline those processes, and perhaps make them easier for assurance providers as well to do their work on that too. But we've been very impressed just with the knowledge and understanding that Socialsuite have and that their way of presenting on that. So I'm very excited. I think that you'll enjoy today's session. Hopefully you'll be interested in the product as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Tim. Welcome along, Tim.
Excellent. Thanks for that introduction, Jamie, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So today we're going to look at materiality and how Socialsuite as a technology provider can help organizations and practitioners streamline that process and also enhance the materiality assessment. So I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Socialsuite, really kind of looking globally around what's happening in the world around sustainability, and in particular around materiality. And double materiality is really now becoming the cornerstone globally. So that's really our expertise area. We're laser focused on doing that and doing that extremely well. As flagged, Socialsuite is a sustainability technology provider. The materiality assessment platform that we have is really kind of positioned as a risk and impact management platform. With that, also value chain due diligence. So we're really trying to get companies and practitioners to understand that a materiality assessment is not a one-off tick box. It's something that you should do on an ongoing basis. And in that sense, we're working with companies, public, private, around the world. Hundreds of them we've helped in various ways in their sustainability journeys now. We have a footprint both in the Asia Pacific out of Australia and in North America with our teams in Austin and New York. We do a lot of content as well. We do a lot of thought leadership, and we have a lot of guests in our own webinar series. So if you do want to know more, in particular about materiality and some related topics, highly recommend you also look at some of our other content on our website. So that's definitely worth having a look at. So without further ado, what are we going to do today in this webinar? I'm going to focus on four areas. The first thing that we're going to look at today is what is materiality. Now, you might already know that, of course, but there's still some key concepts that I do want to run you through and see how that links together in terms of the importance of materiality to companies, how that happens in practice, the different types of materiality, and where organizations and practitioners often find the challenges in the materiality assessment. I realize a lot of people know some of those things already, but it is a really important foundation to then look at the technology. How can we use software? In this case, we're going to look at Socialsuite software to streamline and enhance that process. I'll give you a short demo then as well of our product to show you it's real and what it can do. After that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our partner program, how we support practitioners globally in using our software to do materiality assessments. And I want to end the session today with a couple of case studies to show you how organizations actually use our materiality assessment, and linking that back then to the starting point. What are the reasons that companies actually do materiality assessments, and how does that play out in reality? So first things first, what is materiality? Let's get started with that. Now, we probably know that materiality exists in the sustainability kind of realm, so to say, but it's an existing concept out of kind of financial accounting. But within sustainability, we really define it as identifying the most significant sustainability issues that are impacting a company and all its stakeholders. There are two key components here. So the first is that impacting a company. That is what we often define as what are the sustainability related risks and opportunity that a company is facing. And this is really about the enterprise value of a company. What is affecting the bottom line, so to say. The other side of the coin is if we look at how is a company affecting its stakeholders. And with stakeholders, we mean people and planet at large. So that can be a lot of things. That can be the environment, climate, but also on the social side, its own workers or workers in the value chain. So we're looking at the effects, and those effects can be positive and negative. So what that means is that we have different types of materiality. And the first one on the left here, financial materiality, that is about risks and opportunities. That is about looking at which sustainability matters are reasonably likely to pose risks and opportunities that affect the financial position of an organization. This is the perspective that the IFRS sustainability arm is taking. So the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB. I'll refer to that mostly today when I talk about IFRS. The ISSB is coming from a financial materiality point of view, saying we want to understand what the risks and opportunities are that a company is, confronted by from a sustainability point of view. The other side then again is identifying the sustainability matters that reflect the organization's most significant positive and negative impacts on the economy, environment, and society, people. And often that is done in consultation with stakeholders. This approach, impact materiality, is something that's really driven by the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. That is their cornerstone for materiality. And we see that B Corp and the B Corp standards are taking that impact materiality lens as well. Now, if we take those two perspectives and bring them together, then we get to double materiality. That is really the union of both looking at impact materiality and financial materiality and trying to work out a sustainability matter. Is it material from either that financial impact materiality perspective or maybe from both perspectives? So you're really bringing all that information together. And that is the approach that the European Union now has taken with CSRD in Europe. And that's where that's been mandated for companies that are affected and fall under the CSRD regime in Europe. They have to do a double materiality assessment. So look at both those angles. Companies that are doing reporting under the IFRS, so with the ISSB standards, they will generally be looking at financial materiality, their risks and opportunities. Companies that are doing GRI reporting are generally focused on impact materiality, but we do see more and more companies globally that might not be affected by a mandated regime in terms of double materiality like CSRD, but still want to take that type of double materiality approach, but maybe not use the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS, but actually use the approach the Europeans have created, but use the topic standards from the ISSB, the SASB standards, and the GRI topic standards. So there are different approaches there, but this is a really good kind of starting point for materiality assessments. And it's important for an organization and practitioner to work out what does a company actually want to achieve. Putting that together in more of a diagram, so to say, we've gone through this, but we here now see that single materiality perspective on the right-hand side, either doing impact or financial materiality, or like I said, doing both of them at the same time, double materiality. And on the left side, the same thing with the EU CSRD, looking at impact, risks, and opportunities. So these are key concepts to keep in mind. We then think about the importance of materiality to an organization. What are the reasons, the objectives, the goals, and the actual value an organization gets out of doing a materiality assessment? And talking to a lot of practitioners around the world, working with a lot of organizations on their materiality assessments and their reasons for starting that process or kind of doing that on an ongoing basis, I would say that at large, four reasons that we find. And these reasons are often overlapping. They're not kind of unique reasons that companies that pick one or the other. It's often a mix of these reasons. We see first one that it's often strategically driven. A company might say, we have a sustainability strategy that needs a refresh or an update. We need to know what our priorities are. So let's do a materiality assessment to make sure that we're on the right way here and that we focus on the right things. Likewise, there's a lot of operational sustainability happening, ESG programs, sustainability initiatives. So these are the things companies are actually doing, the acting on. So the implementation of the strategy, that needs that same level of focus. Are we doing the right things? Then there's the reporting component. So that could either be voluntary reporting, say you're reporting on the GRI or with the ISSB or another framework or standard, or it could be that compliance element there, which could be CSRD. For all of them, it's really important you don't just report something that seems the simplest thing to report because you have the data. It is about identifying the information that is actually material to your stakeholders. What actually is of value to your stakeholders to read. So again, the materiality assessment will really help you bring that down to the key information that you report and disclose to your stakeholders. The fourth component then is about stakeholder engagement. And often that is an additional reason for companies to say, we want to be really proactive. We want to be seen as transparent. And we want to actually demonstrate that in our sustainability process and in our thinking and strategizing, we listen to the voice of our stakeholders. And take stakeholders very broadly, that is internal stakeholders at all levels. That is your workforce across the value chain, that is communities, regulators, investors, the general public at large. Stakeholders can be anyone. And it's to work out who are those key stakeholders that you want to involve in that process. And that really depends on industry, on your company's specific situation. But there's often a reason in and of that self to get those insights and to hear that voice and to report back to stakeholders. So those four reasons are generally together form a really solid base for a company or a practitioner to help a company go through that process on a periodic basis. One of the things, like I said earlier, is that traditionally materiality assessments have been seen as, let's call it a sprint, a one-off exercise that might take a month to 3 months, that takes a lot of effort, that will get done, and then we don't have to worry about it for a long time. What we see the movement at the moment in the market globally is best practices moving towards reimagining materiality more toward an ongoing process of monitoring and managing those sustainability-related risks and opportunities. So that's that financial materiality, like you're already managing corporate risk, and also looking at your due diligence across your full value chain. And then we need to think about the things like, what is happening across my value chain? Where am I having direct or indirect impacts? And that could be human rights violation, it could be environmental degradation, climate impacts. So having both those risks and opportunities and impacts really clearly defined, identified, mitigated where you can, managed and monitored on an ongoing basis, rather than doing it, working it out across a 3-month program and then not doing it for another year, 2, 3 years. That's, I think, where the market is moving at the moment. So we see all these 4 reasons are still valid, but they're now being kind of embedded into more of an ongoing process. What does that process then look like? Now, this is really a very interesting component to think about. When you speak to practitioners, to organizations and ESG or sustainability leads, generally speaking, there are a lot of similar components, but every person generally have a slightly different approach, a different way, a different sequence in which they put together a materiality assessment. Largely what we're looking at here, these key components are in some shape or form, maybe with a slightly different label, but in a materiality assessment. Starting from the left about scoping out, what are we doing? What is the objective of the organization that we just looked at? Who is this organization? What are the operational boundaries? Who is in, who is out? Who are the stakeholders? What do we need to know for this materiality assessment? But also then, what is the approach we're taking? Is it single, double materiality? What are the standards we might need to adhere to or be compliant with? So that is often one of the first steps. After that, it's thinking about what do we already know? Have we done materiality assessments before? Do we have existing data around that or other pieces of information that can help us with the next steps in our materiality assessment and help us in the analysis in a later stage? What new research might we need to do on particular value chain components, on particular impacts and risks and opportunities? So it's really thinking about what do we have and what we might need to do to help us, for instance, inform in that full universe of ESG topics, which topics are relevant to our sector, our industry, our specific company or organization. What are the topics that we need to look at? And sometimes there are topics that are very clearly not relevant. You're already at the start now, these topics are not relevant, but there are topics that also are definitely relevant. And then there's that gray area where you're not sure. You want to include them to work out through that materiality assessment. Are they relevant? And next level, are they material to the business? A lot of organizations do materiality assessments, let's say at the topic level. Take pollution. Is pollution relevant or not? It might be, let's do that materiality assessment and see what our stakeholders think and see what we have in terms of data around that. But really we also, and that is more that CSRD approach, where you go down to under pollution, we actually need to understand what are the impacts we're having. Is it land-based pollution? Is it marine-based pollution, waterways? Or what are we talking about? What are the negative and positive impacts we're having? But likewise, what are the risks and opportunities associated for our business with that particular topic of pollution? So impacts, risks, opportunities, IROs that are linked to a topic and often linked to key business activity in your value chain. Identifying all those things is really important, because once you have done that, you can then go to your stakeholders and check if that information is accurate, how they see that, if you've missed anything. Now, this feels very kind of sequential, but often this is very much an ongoing engagement with stakeholders where they will tell you things which you use in terms of your topics and IROs. Then you will check with them again and see what they think around that. So you go through that process there, and ultimately you get to a stage where you have sufficient information to do an analysis on that and see what is floating to the top from a qualitative, quantitative point of view. What have we learned here? And that often then goes into a validation process internally in the business to see what actually is most important. So that's at a very high level how you run through a materiality assessment. There are many iterations and variations on this process. So it just gives you a high level idea of the general components. Now, that process then, many companies go through it, but many companies also have a fairly high level of frustration with the process. So at Socialsuite, we said we need to see how can we take this process and get it to a solution that works for most organizations. And if we look globally, we've done some work on trying to identify out of largely all companies at a certain level. When you look at really small companies, they generally don't do this. So it starts at a certain size of company, but from there, 80% of companies, very rough estimate, conducts some type of materiality assessment. So that could be in various shapes or forms, from very specific and complex to pretty lean and straightforward. But they all want to prioritize and work out what is important. And the majority of them do that with some level of stakeholder engagement. But in that process, they run into a lot of challenges. It's often cumbersome spreadsheets, resource intensity, that sprint where we need suddenly a lot of people to do a lot of work in very little time, stakeholder hurdles, who do we engage and when do we do that, and how do we do that? And how do we set that up in terms of logistics? It's often coming down to the sustainability function, which exists in often many companies, but it's a very small team. So they don't have that capacity. They need to rely on other departments and functions to help with stakeholder engagement. They have their own priorities. And then they often rely on, say, Big Four consultants that can do this work and help out, but at a very high cost. So the frustration then at management level becomes, we have an in-house ESG team. They should be able to handle all this materiality assessment, actually with ease, but they rarely do. There's all these challenges, but also at those ESG teams internally, they might got handed over a spreadsheet from last year from someone who left. They're not sure how it works. They don't know what to do. And there's no consistency in that kind of hopefully ongoing materiality process. So that's why we said there must be a better way to do that. Can we use and create dedicated technology to alleviate that burden of ESG teams that have to go through this exercise, to really help them streamline the process, centralize that process, and make it a lot easier to do this on a more ongoing basis, embed it with your teams and functions to really save on time and cost. That was the premise for us to look at a solution. So that's where we looked at how can we use technology. Now, and this is one of the things that we really kind of know at the core of it. How can we get people out of spreadsheets? Talking to many people, most of them, more than 90% is reliant on spreadsheets on Excel. Everything goes in there. It's often one spreadsheet with many tabs or many spreadsheets with many tabs. And it all needs to work together and link to documentation to have some audit trail and potentially, especially with CSRD, to be assured later. So it's a necessary evil, but everyone loves to hopefully get out of that. So what we looked at is what are the key components that we can do and how can software really benefit that process? So it's about increasing productivity by getting everything centralized, making stakeholder engagement a lot easier with proprietary tools. You don't have to get a free survey tool somewhere off the web that you need to instrument. Everything is really dedicated to this purpose. And with that as well, it's really built around those processes that already exist, whether it be from the ISSB or GRI or B Corp or CSRD. We've made sure that it ticks the boxes for compliance, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's a lot easier to run through that. We've built in a level of team collaboration. We do see that often departments, different people from different departments need to collaborate or contribute to that materiality process. And with that as well, we try to use data-driven decisions as well, do benchmarking across peers, competitors, to really help organizations and practitioners understand what is happening in that space, what are other companies doing, what are some of the key insights you can learn quite quickly, to focus on a really good qualitative and quality stakeholder engagement process rather than spending all your time on desk research. That can often be really done quite quickly. So where we land on that is we're creating software, but we still find that the majority of companies say, great, we do want to use that, but at the same time, we want someone to hold our hand. We need an advisor that can coach us, can guide us, can help us with this work, especially in the first year or few years. So we're a software company, and that's why we are, talking to you today here as practitioners. We find that the majority of our customers want the software, but with a advisor, a practitioner. So that's why we have a partner program, and we'll look at that a little bit later. That's really important to us as well, to be able to deliver that software with partners can help in the implementation. So in terms of technology solutions, on the left here, our software product, our core product, base materiality software that's really focused on stakeholder engagement, more at the topic level, and our advanced materiality software that builds upon that base materiality software, and that is really compliant with CSRD and B Corp certification, the new B Corp standards. And that is really to help companies at a more granular level get into those IROs, the value chain, and really do that work and work their way through the requirements from that CSRD process. We have with that a Socialsuite Academy, so there's materiality training courses in how to do materiality, but really specifically using our product. So we see that's really valuable to partners that say, hey, I'd like to get a hang of your product. How do I use that? You can run through our course and you get a really good idea of what to do and how the software works. And then, like I said, we offer materiality peer benchmarking as well. It's an AI competitive analysis. That's the software. And I do want to look at those two products in a moment and show you a quick demo. After that, I do want to talk a little bit more about the support service, in particular the materiality advisory, and looking at our partnership program. So what we do is we've created software that does a lot of things. Now I can talk you of course through all these things here, but I think it's more valuable if I jump over to a demo of our product. I'm going to only spend a few minutes on it because generally a good demo of either our base or advanced product is around an hour. So what we find is that practitioners that do say, hey, this is interesting. We book some time in with them to really give them a specific demo to what they're after, whether it be our base or advanced product or both products, to show them how that works. But I don't want to not kind of show you the product today. So what I'll do is I'll jump over to this tab here. We're first going to start briefly with our base product, and then I'll show you a few additional components in our advanced product. So what we've done is we've kind of created the dashboard first and foremost that we're looking at now with that process overview. Now that can be changed by the organization or the practitioner. Things can be moved up and down. You can see a status. So it's a quick kind of overview of where are you in the process. The next step in our base product is the topic selection. So this is often informed by additional information that companies already have. This is also where advisors come in. We use our AI benchmarking as well to identify what other companies are doing. And this is a topic management and mapping module in which you can work out what are the topics that are relevant to my organization. So we can go in here. What we can do then is look at the key standards that we have in product, select the standards, select what you want to use from those standards, then refine that topic list. What do we actually want to use? Add to that user created or entity specific topics. So it's very flexible. It allows you to pick from existing standards, but add anything in that you like as well. So that topic management is really a process of selecting in here what you want to use, but often there's more involved there with that. And that means there's discussions and existing information that comes from the organization. They might have done this before. So there's that process. If an organization knows what they're doing, they can go in and do it. But if they're not entirely sure, this is where an advisor will help them select the right topics and go through that thought process of what should be in and could be out. We also capture research in our platform that can be related to, for instance, to topics, but it can be related to risk and opportunity research or impact or value chain or other categories. So this is a pretty broad-based module in which a lot of information can be added in terms of qualitative information that supports the materiality assessment, but also each component can be made quantitative as well. Topics can be scored in here to highlight a particular document or report or information had really kind of interesting insights that can help quantify those insights and then be taken into the analysis later in the product. Next one, our kind of core components in our base product is the stakeholder engagement surveys and interviews. In here, you can create as many surveys as you like, and we're really about trying to move away and advise companies to think about how do you engage your stakeholders with surveys in a sensible way. Don't do a shotgun approach where you get all your stakeholders, one survey, 60 topics, and hope something comes back. It's really about being smart about that. So you can set up a survey. In that survey, then what you can do is select the topics you want this particular group of stakeholders that will get this survey to answer on. So you can toggle and untoggle from that topic module what you're going to use in this survey. There's extensive customization in creating that survey. What does it look like? What is going to be included? Topic ratings, questions. There's a whole lot of customization. Likewise with email setup, how does the platform help you send that out? Then in terms of stakeholders, there's different categories, and I'll jump over for a moment to a completed survey so you get more of a sense of what that looks like. Here we see stakeholders. So there's real clear management of stakeholders in the platform. What have they done? You can view their responses, assign them to groups, weigh particular groups, look at the results, the progress and the results of a particular survey in terms of quantitative, but also qualitative insight. So the surveys are really extensive module where you can capture a lot of information. The same with interviews, an interview module where you can either use in an interview environment directly with a particular stakeholder, multiple stakeholders, or use it to capture that information, create agendas, create different sections with questions, notes, what have people answered, create related records around topics and how they might have scored those topics. So there's a lot of kind of capturing rich insights, but also quantifying those insights. Then next steps are around setting thresholds, for materiality on the either kind of impact or financial materiality. And then there's the analysis and scoring module, in which we can select all the kind of completed inputs, select the ones we want to use, review that, and see how did topics score, and where's that score actually based on? How kind of different surveys and stakeholder groups answered that? What are the insights that led to this score? Ultimately, these are stakeholder insights. So what we often find is that this is the analysis, and then out of that analysis, different components can be generated. For instance, a topic score table where you see topics against either four dimensions, but also impact and financial materiality. All that can be exported into spreadsheets. We can do a quick materiality matrix, see where topics sit. And we find that in particular, advisors really like to use all those outputs from the platform to do further analysis and then bring that into validation workshops with our clients to say, this is what we've learned. Can we validate this? Can we lock this in? And then use that information either in a materiality assessment report or moving into either strategy or annual or sustainability reporting. So that's a really quick overview in terms of our base product. If I jump over to this tab on the left-hand side, you see there's a few more components. What we have in addition is an engagement plan that is more project management, because we see at that level of CSRD, there are more people involved. There's more that needs to happen, both internally and externally. So there's a lot of actions that can be created and followed up. There's more in the preparation phase. We enable you to actually put in the value chain, the key components and business activities in the value chain, the geographies, what is happening, link those activities to stakeholder groups. And then again, those stakeholder groups can be populated in terms of who's in a particular group. So there's a lot more granularity around that. Topics are very similar, but now ESRS generally is, if it is a CSRD related materiality assessment, will be enforced to make sure that you do look at that. But key is as well here is that we include issues, IROs in here. So capturing dependencies, impact, risks, and opportunities, and linking them back to the value chain, to a particular topic or subtopic. So really showing that hierarchy between dependencies, impacts, opportunities, risks, and how they relate together. Now, research, surveys, interviews, very similar. Surveys can be done at either a topic or IRO level. In terms of the thresholds, you can also set more IRO-based thresholds. And the analysis and scoring is now moving to that IRO level, where you really can, at that level, work your way through it. We have an audit trail as well built in, so every change is captured. So we see that it's ready for assurance as well. Now, there's a lot more to the product and a lot more that we can look at, but we generally go through that in terms of a more kind of specific demo. So I do want to go back to the presentation. Like I said, the Academy will really take you through each of those steps that you saw in the product. What are you doing there? What can you do there? How does it work? So the Academy is a really good starting point for anyone who wants to fully understand the product and be able to actually run a materiality assessment. With that materiality peer benchmarking, that sits in a separate kind of tool that we use to do materiality topic mapping, but also demonstrate how peers and competitors are they doing materiality assessments, how do their topics kind of link back to standardized frameworks and standards like GRI, SASB, or the ESRS. So you get really good insights there, and that is generally very useful for that first kind of topic mapping in the product. Now that's the technology. In terms of our partner program, we really want to make sure that partners can use this on an ongoing basis. So in terms of our advisory, we have a couple of ways that we work with advisors. And the main ways that we find that are really kind of on the left side is more the software-driven process, where we will get associated with an organization that says, great, I do want to use your software for our next materiality assessment, but we need someone to provide that coaching, that guidance, the advisory that comes with it. We're not confident to run it on our own. So Socialsuite will provide that software, but then we'll find a partner that we can subcontract and that will kind of come along on the journey with the software to help the implementation. So that model, we have just a partner program where we have materiality partners. So that is something that is of interest definitely reach out to us and we can kind of look at what your interest exactly is and put you into our partner program. Now, of course, the other way around is that you are already doing materiality assessments, and now and then an organization comes up that says, hey, we want to do this, and you think, hey, this would be interesting as a addition to our advisory service. It could really help us streamline the work we're doing. We want to get a license for this particular client on the Socialsuite software and wrap our services around that, or integrate that Socialsuite software in the existing process that we have. Again, that's a really kind of common process that we see. So this is more coming from the advisor. And again, if that is something that you're interested in, generally we see it's really a two-way street there, where with our partners, it can come either way. So these are those two models, and we are really kind of happy to talk more about how that could work. We see it work in different ways in different markets. So something that we can talk about in line with a demo of more kind of in-depth of the product. Now, finally, then to wrap up for today, a couple of case studies. So some actual companies that have used our software, they've gone through that process on the platform, and how did they experience that, and what were their goals? So I've tried to come up with a few customers that are different, slightly different strategic kind of starting points, like what did they want to get out of it, and I'll show you, what that process looked like. The first one, we're looking at the Pesha Group based out of California, USA. Their industry, transportation and logistics, and they worked with us on a base materiality assessment with an advisor. Their key starting point was that they had a pretty good sustainability program. They were doing a lot of the work, but they said, we really want to make sure that what we're doing aligns with stakeholder priorities. So this was all about better understanding and meeting the expectations of their stakeholders. So they said, let's do a base materiality assessment. We're not really going to get at that IRO level. We want to get those topics out to our stakeholders and capture rich and qualitative, but also quantitative insights in what do our stakeholders think. So this was about 500 stakeholders in terms of a survey, but also a lot of interviews to supplement that. An advisor supported then executive workshops to turn all the insights into more kind of actionable priorities to help the organization take all that stakeholder insight back to where are our sustainability priorities and how do they align then. And throughout that process as well, they really noticed that it was a really useful way with all those stakeholders internally and externally to drive more of sustainability literacy, to also have more transparency on how the company does their sustainability. And it really, in the end, really built stakeholder trust. So that was really a good additional outcome of that process. And finally, they really took all that information and really kind of got to that level of embedding all that information into the organization. So this was really that stakeholder engagement focus. And of course, they got a lot more out of it, but that was the starting point. Another organization out of the US, out of New York, Double Verify, they're in digital media measurement, also base materiality with an advisor. And their starting point was initially really about, we need to strategically prioritize our sustainability program. So we really need to get clarity and focus on what are the priorities, but also in the back of our mind is we need to prepare for compliance. Yes, we're in the US and there might not be that much coming our way directly, but we're a large kind of company and we need to look at what's happening in Europe, be prepared for CSRD as well. So we want to move forward with this. So they conducted a double materiality assessment, internal, external stakeholders, and then validated those findings, again, with an advisor in an executive strategy workshop to really kind of bring those stakeholder insight to the executive kind of level as well. They identified 6 material strategic areas. And the main thing that I found is out of that process, they felt this was a good stepping stone to be prepared for a more complex double materiality assessment in due course if we do need to align with CSRD requirements. So we've done that base materiality assessment. We identified our priorities. We've really taken the right steps toward where we need to go. Then we're moving from the US to Australia. And here we're looking at ISPT, one of Australia's largest property fund managers. based out of Melbourne, Victoria in Australia. They used our advanced approach to materiality with a advisor. And their initial kind of starting point was really about, we have a large sustainability strategy refresh coming up. We want to make sure that, again, our priorities are clear. We do the right things, focus on the right things. But in doing that materiality assessment, we are really keen to follow global ESG expectations and best practices. And can we use that process that they use in Europe, the CSRD kind of aligned methodology for double materiality, but the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reported Standard, are not really relevant to us. So can we supplement that for GRI and SASB? A very common approach to take that best practice European process, but then use in terms of the topic standards GRI and SASB to still have that double materiality coverage. So that was a really good approach in which we, again, with an advisor, supported them in the platform to go through that value chain mapping, IRO, identification, scoring, that whole engagement process with internal and external groups through surveys and interviews, and then take all that information and bring that together to help them inform their strategy. They came with 10, kind of in the end, with 10 material strategic areas with a lot of subtopics there that fell in those 10 areas. And they were really looking at now kind of establishing that continuous sustainability leadership. So how can we take this moving forward to make sure there's that ongoing lens on what we're doing from a priority and materiality point of view. And finally, to wrap things up from a case study perspective, we're going to look at Tabcorp, which is another industry again. This time we're looking at gambling and entertainment, one of Australia's largest gambling entertainment companies. They had been doing materiality assessments, and they already had collected a lot of, they call it pre-assessment insights. They've been doing single materiality previously. They had a lot of information. We want to utilize that in order to refresh our sustainability framework in a comprehensive way. And they said that the same thing is that we're moving towards that single periodic materiality assessment to more of an ongoing process. So they really were looking at spreading the assessment out over the course of a year to more consistently manage the implementation, the stakeholder engagement, to really start initially with a pulse check on materiality, do a round of stakeholder engagement, circle back, then come back again with another round and using the insights from the first round. So it was really a really interesting process in which they combined a lot of qualitative, quantitative, pre-assessment data, and really did a lot of kind of checks throughout the year to make sure that they kind of moved forward and were learning from what their stakeholders told them. And one of the key things they found is that they had a lot of data in spreadsheets and other documents, and now they could put it all in one place. So to them, having a dedicated platform where they could put everything and use that to analyze the data was really a game changer. So they said, finally, we can get out of those spreadsheets and have a place to, do this in a more streamlined fashion and do that on an ongoing basis. So they found some really rich insights that was really valuable to them in terms of their material topics. And again, an advisor really helped them with that validation process. Ultimately, out of all that information, I've learned into a workshop at their ESG committee. So again, in all these case studies, we see the core kind of foundation is going through that dedicated technology platform, but advisors still play a crucial role to keep the momentum, to guide, to coach, to do some of the work, which sometimes are, setting up the survey or doing that interview or doing that together. So it's really that kind of, ongoing service that helps maximize the value of the technology. Now, if you go to our website, you'll find a lot more companies with customer stories, case studies, testimonials. So if you want to see different industries, different geographies, there's a lot more on our website if you want to learn a little bit more. Like I said, there's also webinars, content. So there's a lot more information about how we see materiality, what we're seeing in the world, happening in terms of the changes to materiality. Like I said, in Europe now with the omnibus, so there might be some changes to the materiality process, not so much to the requirements. So I think they're looking at simplification, as they call it. I don't think that it fundamentally will change anything in terms of the requirements of what you need to do, but maybe the how. And there's some really good ways in which it can be a bit more efficient that we had already anticipated and built into our platform. So for us, it's great to hear that they're kind of almost like following the way that we set up our platform. Now, with that, I realize we're getting close to time, or pretty much on time. So I want to maybe kind of invite Jamie and see if there's any questions that might have come up while I was talking, and if I can answer them.
Thank you very much, Tim. Definitely been a few questions that have come up that you have already answered as we've gone through. So I'll try and sort of keep it to uh, topics that maybe we can explore in a bit more depth with you. Um, yeah, so I would just to confirm, I think we're all very aware, and we've been aware for the past few years, just how much ESRS dominates the headlines and sustainability reporting. But just to clarify, in terms of the Social Suite client base, do you have demand? Are you supporting companies and advisors in other reporting circumstances outside of ESRS, so voluntary reporting or under reporting frameworks now mandated in jurisdictions outside of the EU?
Yeah, definitely. So we find we have customers across the globe, North America, South America, Europe, Asia Pacific, Africa, maybe one or two, not so much there. But we see that with our platform, yes, we have a compliant CSRD ESRS process, also for B Corp, but we also support the ISSB process, the GRI process in terms of the financial and impact materiality. So we definitely have companies that say we do GRI reporting, we want to do just the impact materiality, fine, voluntary reporting, no problem. We see companies that say IFRS S1, broad-based financial materiality, risks, opportunities. Yes, that can be done. And like I said, with the product as well, you can do more of a stakeholder kind of driven topic level assessment. You can go more down the route of that CSRD process, but you don't stick to the exact CSRD rules if you're in a different geography. Out of Australia, we see a lot of companies that don't fall under CSRD, but still want to use that more kind of advanced process because they see that as best practice, but they make some changes. So they say it's hybrid. We're going to do things that are not exactly as CSRD might require, but that make sense to us in our jurisdiction or our geography.
Okay. Yeah, and that almost ties in with another sort of similar question around, if you like, sort of reverse engineering. Now, I think again, in comparison to ESRS standards, which are very prescriptive in terms of what needs to be disclosed and quite a lot of guidance in terms of the way that information should be presented. But are you seeing circumstances where preparers are focusing not so much on what the standards say, but more focusing on the end result in terms of, well, this is the way that we want to present it. This is what we want it to look like. And with that presentation in mind, can Social Suite help us assemble the data and process it to achieve that end result? Do you have those sort of conversations with
No,
preparers?
we do have like maybe in a way where companies have a preconceived notion of what is material. They already know what it
Yeah.
is and want to basically tie a process to that. But it often is that once they tick the box of, well, let's do the materiality assessment because I guess we have to, when they go through that exercise, yes, they might get confirmed that what they thought was material is material, but there's always some insights that might be surprising, might be things that were on the fringe or not that relevant or not even on the radar that come up. So we see majority of companies do find in the end more value out of it going through that process. Then in terms of what we see in particular with CSRD is it's almost as much about the process as about the results. And that's another key thing to keep in mind is that what I've seen with the first kind of wave one in Europe, the CSRD reports there, there are different requirements around stakeholder engagement, but a lot of companies were very minimal in terms of the stakeholder engagement they did. And they said we did stakeholder engagement. I think that you probably need to go in a bit more detail there to actually demonstrate what you've done and how you've done that. So that 50% is the methodology. So what have you done? How have you done it? How have you done each of those steps? And that's really important to us as well. But the other part then is, yes, you need to know what are material topics, what are material IROs, but in particular for ESRS, how does that link then to your material disclosure requirements and material data points? That's what you want to walk away with, because that then is the next step in your ESRS reporting. You need to go from topics and IROs to disclosure requirements and data points, and then you do that actual disclosure on those particular data points. And that's how our platform works as well. We want to make sure that we leave you, we're not just with, here's a list of topics and topic standards, but here are the relevant data points, and that's then what you can use. We see that a lot of companies use that then with their reporting advisors or platforms and say, we know now what to do, we can take the next steps from there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. Just a couple more questions, if that's okay with you, before we wrap up. Eh, just a question. I think we touched on this, but maybe just to go a little bit deeper. Um, Maybe to what extent does Social Suite help with the estimation of financial impact, or in terms of drawing out the nature of opportunities, having done that materiality analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question. At the moment, we see that companies are trying to, particular under the CSRD, trying to go through that process of looking at, is a topic or an IRO material, and what score do we put around that? Is it a 1 to 5 effectively? But that ultimately, in particular from that financial materiality perspective, needs to translate what is the dollar amount there. Now, we don't have a particular view on what that should be, because that's very company specific. And what we often see is that that is generally where either we recommend the sustainability team talks to the financial department, because they often already, from an accounting perspective, have risk management, have those thresholds already, and it's just linking that up. And if that doesn't exist, that's where advisors come in and often really help out in that process to identify that. The other component then is, how do you value impacts? That's a trickier one. Now we're looking at both components, like how do you put a dollar value on a particular impact, and risks and opportunities as well. There's some really interesting methodologies out there, and that is on our roadmap to ultimately get that into our platform as well. I would say that the majority of companies are not doing that yet. I think it is good practice to do that, but we're not there yet. So it is definitely a kind of on the horizon. I think in the next 5 years, we'll definitely get to that point where that is becoming best practice and common practice for most companies. And we are working towards doing that in a sensible way that works for most organizations, with enough flexibility, but still guides you through that process.
Yeah, that does seem to be a fairly common criticism of quite a lot of the wave one reporting under ESRS anyway, that financial impacts are possibly not being reported as frequently as you might have expected. But maybe one other criticism seems to be that reporters are having trouble distinguishing between a negative, sorry, I should say a positive impact and an opportunity. And the observation in quite a lot of studies being that where reporters are presenting positive impacts, then they're not really presenting opportunities, and vice versa. Is that something that you were aware of as well, or and can Social Suite help maybe distinguish more clearly, this is a positive impact and this is different, but it's an opportunity, and we need to discuss them both?
That is an excellent question. I think that is a really interesting area. And this is where I think it's really important to think about, in that process of thinking around impacts, risks, opportunities, also to think about dependencies, and try to think about that in terms of how EFRAG, got the guidance out, but also ESRS. The most useful way is to start out to think about, what are our dependencies as a company? What do we really depend on? And that often drives risks. Like if that dependency suddenly falls, like the dependency you have on a particular resource, and that is not accessible, there's a risk around that. But then think about, as a next step, think about impacts. So what are the negative impacts we're having on the world? And often a negative impact is also a driver of a risk. A positive impact could also be a driver of an opportunity. but likewise, a negative impact can also drive opportunity. So impacts are often drivers of risks and opportunities. So that hierarchy that you saw on our platform as well, it's really important to think about. The main thing that I've seen, and that is where there's new guidance out now as well, is that companies have reported too many positive impacts. Positive impacts, the way to think about them is that it can't be an action to mitigate a negative impact, or it can't be business as usual. It can't be something that is commonplace. So saying we have a good health and safety, culture in our workplace, that's not a positive impact. That is expected either by law maybe, or just generally speaking. So there's the kind of, they really kind of looking at positive impacts, and companies need to really do something in addition, above and beyond what is expected from regulatory point of view, common business as usual. But there definitely can be links between positive impacts and opportunities. But it's really mapping that out and thinking about financial risks and opportunities are to the business, and impacts that you're having on the world. And they're definitely relationship. And I think those hierarchies are really important to map.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And I think what's very impressive as well with Socialsuite is the benchmarking capability in the platform. And I'm just wondering, to what extent that now becomes all the more powerful in terms of what you can offer through Socialsuite now that there is sort of significantly more reporting in the public domain to help with assemble the data for the benchmarking.
Yeah, no, and that's indeed, the more reports are out there, the more organizations doing either ESRS reporting or other reporting, the more information we can look at to actually see what are companies reporting, what are their material topics, how does it relate to, peers, competitors, the industry at large, or the sector, and really generate insights from that. At the moment, we do that at the topic level, but what we're doing is that we're now looking at how can we do that at that IRO level, because then it becomes really powerful. Topics are really interesting to look at, and you can learn what do you need to look at and make sure you're not missing out. But really seeing at a more granular level, what are the key material impacts, risks, and opportunities that your 10 peers and competitors are reporting, then you really kind of can see, am I, doing the same thing or slightly different? So that's the kind of the next evolution that we're working on now. So I think there's a lot that with more reports coming out, a lot more information, and with AI, all these things can be done much quicker, streamlined, and in a format that's really accessible to either the practitioner or the organization to say, hey, this is something really useful to take as a starting point.
Yeah, great. Well, Tim, I could go on for quite a long time. It's a fascinating topic and a really, really interesting solution that you have. Just maybe one final question. I'm sure our firms will, and all of the people on the call today will be keen to speak with you again, find out more information, perhaps on pricing or how to sort of use the platform in more detail. But yeah, I'm just going to ask them, what's the best way to contact you?
I would say three ways. If you want to talk to someone in the Eastern Australian Sydney time zone, reach out to me. If you want to talk to someone in the US, out of New York, talk to Seth Foreman, our Chief Executive Officer, or you can just go to our website, socialsuitehq.com/book a demo, and then fill out the form and we'll get back to you. So many ways to get in touch, or find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. And I really enjoy talking to practitioners from around the world and organizations, obligation free, just to hear what's on their mind, what might they be missing in our platform, what is their process, get feedback, and work through with them like what they see happening in the market. So always ready for a chat.
Wonderful. Well, Tim, that's a really interesting presentation today. Great product, and I do hope our firms have picked up on the benefits that they can bring to their clients as they all sort of go about how the best way to assemble all the data and find their material impacts for sustainability reporting. So thank you very, very much indeed, Tim. And we'll look forward hopefully to speaking to you again one day. In the meantime, just to say to everybody else who joined us today, thank you for joining us. We had a great attendance from various parts of the world. You will receive your certificates of attendance very soon through email. There will be a short survey coming to you as well. grateful if you could take the time to just give the answers to that. It really helps us prepare content for future webinars as well. Thank you, Debbie and Yolandi, for helping us put on the presentation today, and we'll look forward to speaking to you soon on our future sustainability webinar series later this month and early October as well. Thanks very much to everybody. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.